Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the RocketMSP Podcast. I'm Steve Taylor, your host. Today, I'm joined by two gentlemen from the company Augmentt. The first is Derik Belair, the CEO, and also we have Robbie. I should have asked you how to pronounce this. Brisson.
Brisson. I'm French. Thanks.
I was trying. So, Robbie, Derik, thanks for coming on here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Steve.
Absolutely. So we're talking about Augmentt, and I assume everybody's wondering what's Augmentt. And obviously, you have the latest and greatest like headset technology where we just put it on and then we're like involved in the video games, right? Augmented reality type thing.
If only. Speaking of which, I would like one of those headsets, though. Yeah.
So would I.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I can give you sort of a quick overview of the business, and then we can get into it. So Augmentt Technology, myself and a fellow named Gavin Garbett started this business in early 2020. Gavin and I had started a business called Enable Technologies back in 2000, so long time ago. And the goal at that time was to build an RMM platform, so remote monitoring and management platform for the MSP community. And through about a 13-year journey, we built it up. Really, we're very involved in the transition from reseller, break fix type of service delivery for the channel towards more of a managed services delivery. Anyways, long story short, we sold the business in 2013 to SolarWinds, and at that time, like all of us, we were seeing a very interesting shift in the marketplace where hardware was going to cloud and software was moving towards SaaS. And at the time, MSPs were really starting to pay attention because, Microsoft, with the move from on-premise to Microsoft 365, they were really pushing hard on that side of the business. So it was really our concept that we wanted to, at that time, evolve the RMM platform towards cloud and SaaS. Because ultimately, we believe that the MSP community is uniquely positioned to really drive really good services on top of this shift towards cloud and SaaS. So long story short, we decided to partner up again, built up this business, and now Augmentt is in the SaaS management business for MSPs. And that's really been the journey. Fairly young company, but growing very rapidly.
I love that. So, what I feel like I just heard was, we had the opportunity to build an awesome platform, which, let's be honest, Enable was kind of a first of its kind, best in class platform for a very long time. We'll skip what everyone's opinion is of everything today. Okay, we're not going to worry about the current temperature on that or any of other products. What I'm hearing is, so you got the opportunity to build that, sell it, probably make a lot of money, and then turn around and start doing this again, because back in 2000 when you started Enable, you saw like, we're going to have this Y2K boom. There's going to be technology everywhere. Let's start this now. And now you started Augmentt, and that's because you're basically seeing the same thing. And what's crazy is I remember, back in like 05, 06, saying to my boss, like, man, I just wish like clients didn't have to spend so much money on all this stuff. Like I remember they'd have to buy all this licensing for terminal server, and they used Goldmine and QuoteWorks and all this software, right? So, and now you don't have to. Now they've got the CSP program, they've got the SPLA program. There's programs galore that allow us to basically like rent all of this licensing, and it probably costs more in the long run for us doing it this way, but it is more convenient, at least. I will also complain that, back then I just wanted the really expensive things to be more attainable.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get nickel and dime for every little thing. I didn't want to have to pay a subscription to get like Microsoft Office. So I guess you saw this kind of coming, right? So when you decided to start making Augmentt, when was that? When did you guys found the company?
So we officially got started January 1st, 2020. I'd say that Gavin and I have been having this conversation at various degrees. The minute we joined forces with SolarWinds, the minute we sold the business, we felt that there was an opportunity. In 2013, it was a small nugget of an opportunity. But Gavin and I, the way that we've always looked at it is we always put ourselves in the shoes of the MSPs, and we always try to think of, first of all, we love the MSP channel, and my entire, I'd say, working career has been really around how do we make the MSPs more successful? How do we make them be able to deliver more profitable services? So service delivery today and in the future is basically what I think about every single day. And when Gavin and I started talking about this together in 2013, it was really just starting. We know that the move from hardware to cloud was going to make a lot of sense. This whole hardware as a service, whatever you want to call it. We really saw that happening, although we felt there was a lot of work and expertise needed to become a DevOps shop. And that may not necessarily be for all MSPs. But when we looked at services and we started looking forward, we really saw the services landscape changing from networking and system-centric services and network security. All of a sudden, the cloud and SaaS really added a whole new element. Like you said, at the end of the day, it was a lot less about buying the infrastructure and the gear and making it work together and making sure it's secure. And all of a sudden, in a world where everything was in the cloud and SaaS, which, we may or may not get there, but we're certainly on that journey, where does the MSP fit in? And for us, we, like we did back in 2000, we feel that the MSP is at the very heart of this thing. And while technology may have gotten easier to acquire and to buy, making it work together, I think, is even more of a challenge today than it's ever been, because now you're dealing with on-premise and infrastructure. You're dealing with data-centric approach to application and usage. You're dealing with users that are geographically everywhere on their own device, on company device. So it's like the problem has gotten much more difficult, but the technology's gotten easier to acquire. So for us, everything was around like, oh my God, if we felt that in 2000, there was a real opportunity for MSPs to capitalize on the shift to MSP services, we feel like what's ahead of them now is even bigger. So we're even more excited. So in 2020, when we started this thing, we're like, we got to jump all over this. We feel like, while we're not necessarily the first to think about SaaS management, we're certainly the first to look at it, I think, from an MSP's perspective and try to figure out how to capitalize on it. So for us, the passion was there, and if the passion is there, then we're both all in.
That's awesome. Robbie, how about you? Where do you fit in? Were you over at Enable?
You read that right. So I joined Enable back in 2015. I was working on both initially the Enable platform, the Central platform, I should say, patch management, product manager there, and then ended up taking more and more products on. When there was the acquisition with Logic Now, I touched basically both platforms quite heavily, and just got called to go join a bunch of friends basically and say, let's keep doing this thing. The MSP space is extremely exciting. This was just a brand new challenge in that same space.
So we kind of know, why Augmentt got started. Let's talk about the how it got started. So Derik, you keep mentioning Gavin, and I might know who Gavin is, but I've never actually known a person named Gavin. So the only thing I can think of is Gavin from Silicon Valley. And then
What's his name? Belfoy.
I thought it was Belsum, which it's so close to Gavin Newsom from California. What is it? I can't think of it. He's not the mayor. He's the governor of California.
That's right.
So like the names are so close, it's hysterical. But the even worse part about it is when I think of Gavin from Silicon Valley, I think of the his signature, where it looked like a piece of anatomy. So, and I just want to be clear, I don't actually think that about your Gavin. Just, when I think of the name Gavin, I think of Silicon Valley, and then I go to that signature, and it's hilarious. So, if anything, I think your Gavin's probably a hilarious guy.
Better signature.
Yeah, he's got a great signature at least. So, tell me, who's Gavin?
Right. I keep mentioning Gavin and assuming everybody. So Gavin was the founder of Enable. He and I, really were at Enable minute one. Gavin's background is in investment banking. That's really where he got his start. And his interest in the managed services space was really about the market opportunity that he saw in the transition from VAR reseller model towards managed services. I would say he's someone that sees opportunities when it is truly early, whereas now you see a lot of private equity guys, obviously in the MSP space, very active. He was one of the first guys that really saw that within a 10 to 15 year window, this was going to be a very exciting space. Gavin is my business partner here. We're both co-founders. He's chairman. I'm CEO. We're very good friends. We have, lots of stories of things we've done outside of work, but he's a very strong advocate for the MSP space. He's also someone that I would say can probably pick up the phone and talk to, the top 200 or 300 MSPs globally. And there's a name recognition there because of Enable. So, he's while not day-to-day operational in the business, he's definitely there from a structure, a momentum, how we approach, the space, and just a very strong strategic thinker. And he's got a great signature. And we may, if we do make hardware, we'll put that little faceplate on there with his.
I can't wait. So besides you and Gavin and maybe any other partners that might be listed on your website, do you have any other investors, ConnectWise secretly your owner or?
No, I can officially say that we do not have any vendor investors, any of that. Gavin and I, as you mentioned, through the acquisition of SolarWinds, we've done well, and we've been lucky to be in a position where we can fund this business ourselves. Now we do have some angel investors, former colleagues, people that we've worked with, but basically it is a self-funded business. And the goal of this is to truly build it with a very short-term focus on profitability. Because again, the goal for us is to truly build this as a self-sustaining business. So you'll see some rounds of investment to capitalize on some market opportunities in front of us, but right now that's not a big priority or focus for us.
Great. Development of the product. Is everyone that touches this thing an employee? Do you have contractors? Do you have Kim Jong-un, having his people help you make it? What are we in for here?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you start a business like this, obviously technology is the core of it, and a very, very strong focus on building quality, valuable products has to be at the center of it. Otherwise, what's the point? So I would say that we've been very fortunate that we've been able to assemble a team of in-house developers. We're based in Ottawa, Canada, but most of our developers are Toronto all the way out to the West Coast. Right now, we do not have any outside of North America. There's no developers outside of North America. And we do use contractors, but for very specialized work. So either very specialized DevOps work, very specialized security work, or any type of data processing, anything that's really data intensive. We use parts of the Elk stack, so Elasticsearch, Logstash, and we tend to look for very specialized talent there. But the core team, it's my belief that needs to be an in-house team, and it's very, very hard to build very good quality focused products when the team is truly diversified. They're not employed full time, and those core values don't always sort of permeate those outsourced teams.
That is absolutely true. Now, what you're building, while you probably thought about doing this for several years before you officially started, what you're building, apparently other people have had this great idea too. So I'm going to name drop, but it's not because we're saying anybody's better or worse. We're just gonna simply put it out there that there are other companies like Nuvalex, MSP Magic, Simian Cloud.
Yep.
Those are the three that I can think of. There's probably more. I haven't interviewed them though. So why should we be using Augmentt instead of any of those other platforms? Because, I think everyone's going to say, well, you should use ours because ours is the best, or because we do this better, or whatever. But I've also found that it seems like some of the companies are like specializing in something. Like Simian Cloud, they're really going hard at the policies thing. So if you want to know for sure that you've got a really high score on that Microsoft Secure Score thing that they do, is that the name of it? I hope it is.
I think it is.
But it's good. Yeah, whatever. They've probably renamed it.
People get it.
More times. That thing, that they can tell you, like, if you set our policy that we've built and make no changes, we can tell you that you'll have a 94 or what. I don't remember the number, but they can tell you what your score will be.
Yeah.
And that's really impressive. So why Augmentt?
Yeah, so I'll answer the question in two parts. So number one, definitely for this space to take off and for Augmentt to succeed, there needs to be other players in the space. If this is a one-man band, the reality is it's probably not a real space, and it's probably not a real market opportunity. So I always welcome, lots of people, in this space beating the drum, because the more people that are out there talking about SaaS, talking about cloud, talking about management, the more, first of all, it pushes all of us forward, and it really helps people understand that, listen, there's something here. There's lots of people talking about this. So that's number one. I would say that there are competitors that come from various places. Certainly the enterprise, they've gone, well ahead. They're, when it comes to the MSP space, the enterprise tend to develop technology for the enterprise first, and then it slowly makes its way to the MSP space. So the Better Clouds, the Blissfully, all those guys are being very successful at SaaS management for the enterprise. Why Augmentt? Well, again, for us, our 100% of our focus is on the MSP community. So from the beginning, day one, everything was focused around building that multi-tenancy, building the security, understanding the workflow, understanding the integration that needs to be in place, and really just understanding how MSPs work. It's easy for all of us because we've been at it for so long, but when you're talking to somebody that's really not in this space, it is a bit of a stretch. Like, all right, so there's the customer, and then there's an MSP, and then there's and there needs to be value here and there needs to be value there. So I think that's really the distinction between us and a lot of the mid-market products. With regards to the solution that you've mentioned, everybody that starts off with a vision of SaaS management needs to start somewhere. So you either start by going deep on single solution management. So we are going to be a Microsoft 365 management platform. So Nuvalex, for example, has done a lot of great work on M365, multi-tenanted management. Some of the other guys will look at cloud. They'll look at security. I don't know if you guys mentioned, but companies like SaaS Alerts, for example, they look at security perspective of SaaS. The way we approached it was really around the fact that we know we want to be a SaaS management platform. We know that there are some very specific pillars that needs to be addressed if you truly want to be in that platform business. Data, users, and application. Those are the three big things that most of our customers want us to cover off. And most of our customers want us to go beyond a single, Microsoft 365. They want us to look at SaaS management. So I would say what's different for us is that we are building this as a platform. We are building this to address the overall needs of SaaS management as opposed to just picking one specific. And while that is probably one of the harder roads to go down, to build a platform from the beginning as opposed to just a point solution, we feel, and in our experience, that is really what is going to lead you down that path towards success. Because MSPs today, as you know, they have a lot of tools that they can choose from. Most of the MSPs that we talk to today are not looking to necessarily bring on more tools. They're looking to consolidate. They're looking to make their stack more optimized. And so for us, it's very important that we don't get pushed down the road of just having a widget. We really are building that platform. So we're doing all the work and the investment to make that happen. And I think it's going to pay off, I hope.
So I believe I'm just going to take all of that and distill it down to what I believe I heard is you're building a platform that's not just Microsoft
Correct.
Cloud management. It's all kinds of software as a service platforms management.
Correct.
With that, I believe right now, can you do anything other than Microsoft's cloud?
So right now it's M365 and Google Workspace coming within the next few weeks.
Okay.
And the goal is that core stack. So when we talk to the MSPs, really what we hear over and over again is M365, Google Workspace, Salesforce, Adobe, and then, some of the file sharing, the Box, Dropbox. So that tends to be the initial stack they want us to cover off. But again, in that whole platform thinking, it's around if we wanted to add other solution, if we wanted to allow the MSPs to potentially add their own solution, how do we build that open architecture? How do we build a platform where people can say, I've got this tool over here, and while it may not appeal to anybody else, it's critical to us. We understand the APIs, we understand the connection, and we want to extend the Augmentt platform to enable that. So it's that platform thinking that is going to allow us to go well beyond.
When I think of an all-inclusive SaaS management platform that is basically trying to be today's, SaaS RMM, I think of all the other things that happen with SaaS. For example, Google, I guess it's not G Suite anymore, Google Workplace,
Yeah.
Workspace, whatever, who cares? Whatever.
I just call it G Suite all the time now.
Yeah, it's enterprise Gmail, that thing.
Yeah.
Or Microsoft 365. Both of those have like backup solutions out there. And now there's probably a couple dozen of solutions these days. I remember, years ago when there was like 2, but backing it up is pretty important. I would think that your platform should be integrating with those backup tools. So that way we can log into one place and see that all my Googles are backed up, all my Microsofts are backed up. You should be integrating with, the spam filters, the iron scales and all the other things, right? And saying, okay, now I see that we've got X number of threats. There's so many things in the quarantine, et cetera, and we'll be able to see all of this. And I think MSPs are also leery of that concept of the single pane of glass, because they've been sold that so many times, and it's never really a single pane of glass. And the other thing that MSPs are really probably getting sick of is, I'm just going to take an example out of a different RMM tool. I'm not going to name the name, but I remember signing up for it with a trial back in like 2015 or 16, just a few years ago, not long.
Okay.
If you think about what I'm about to say, it had a bunch of like Exchange 2003 scripts in it, and like something with host files, and it's like all the automation that they had built into it was all revolving around like 20-year-old technology. Like, hey, I used to be a really good IT guy 20 years ago before I made this RMM tool.
Yep.
So I'm going to put all these scripts that I know are solid scripts in, and you guys are going to love it. We're going to build this up, hundreds of scripts, and they're all garbage scripts. Like maybe one of them's helpful, And it's like, oh, look, I've got one that automatically clears my cookies. Now, if you could fix something useful, that'd be great. So what, like, are you going to be automating things for all of these SaaS platforms? Like, will you be able to, using an API or something, tell the Google Cloud backup thing that it didn't do it correctly and it should run again, or that you need to run a restore or anything like that, like what we can actually do when you think about what we can do today with an RMM and comprehensive knowledge of scripting?
Yeah, so I'll answer the question in two parts because it's a great question, and it's certainly one that myself and certainly Robbie and our VP of Product Management, Ali, have been thinking about. So on the first part, you're right. The single pane of glass, while it looks incredible on a marketing fly sheet or on a website, the reality is that you probably need multiple panes of glass to really do it effectively. Anybody that pitches themselves as the one central pane of glass, the reality is you're either missing certain parts of it or you're forcing people to move around applications. So I think that's very real. I think it's choosing the pane of glass you want to own and recognizing that there are others that you're probably not going to you're not going to take over. I will say that data loss prevention, backup is critical to us. And I'd say within the next 30 days, you're going to hear from Augmentt the fact that we are going to start to actively partner with vendors in this space. Because again, if you're thinking about SaaS management, you're really thinking about how do I configure the applications to be secure? How do you make sure that the users are using the right applications and they're doing the right things with it? But ultimately, it all comes down to data, right? At the end of the day, while deleting a user account is an issue, losing data is ultimately what people, are incredibly concerned about. So backup is critical. You're going to see that coming from us also. With regards to your other question, there's really two roads that anybody that looks at SaaS management will look at, especially when you start with Microsoft 365. I would say one road looks super exciting. The other road looks a little bit more difficult. And that's really the PowerShell versus API. When it comes to Microsoft, it's really PowerShell versus Graph API. And it's very easy, I think, to get lured in, to your point, to the PowerShell thing, because if you type in Microsoft 365 PowerShells, I mean, GitHub is full of stuff and it looks so enticing to just be like, well, maybe we can just take a PowerShell execution engine, which is in every RMM vendor, plus most PSAs. And if we just create a collection of PowerShell scripts, good or bad, whatever, ta-da, we're in the M365 management game. And for us, the goal was not necessarily, is that the easiest way, but we chose to integrate at an API level using the Graph API. It's where we feel, for Microsoft specific, it's probably the area that makes the most sense for us. And while it's probably less, maybe less documented, less widely, used in some of the PowerShell stuff, it really gives us a lot of certainty that what we're doing is really in line with where Microsoft is going moving forward. Robbie, I'll let you answer, because you've been obviously doing the investigation of all the other products we're using, and not all products are equal, created equal, and nor do they all have API access. But maybe you can talk a little bit about the challenges on some of the integration post M365.
Yeah, and even with M365, right? It's a flavor of things. So Graph API obviously being the technology of point, but it's also not complete. So this is a situation where we're actually using both some PowerShell and some Graph API. But our PowerShell, of course, is actually, we're giving real GUIs. We're not saying, here's a scripting engine and go make mistakes. Yeah. And then, we're elaborating on things like Google Workspace right now, researching Salesforce, et cetera. And there's limitations within the APIs. You can't get pricing information, or sometimes you can or cannot get certain MFA data, et cetera. So it's definitely a good challenge, and we have to, find clever ways to make the product extremely valuable for the MSP on a day in, day out basis, so that they can do things like run a report on MFA for a company throughout all their applications. And in some cases, we'll be able to say, hey, and you can manage this MFA. And in some cases, we'll be limited to saying, we can tell you where it is, and then, go manage it, and hopefully provide a comprehensive set of tools that we can, make the day-to-day management of these these platforms possible.
One thing that Enable did really well that I'm still impressed to this day. You guys built that like scripting engine where it was like drag and drop. It was like stupid easy. All we had to do is, put things in the order we wanted it to run. I still remember the first time I tried to use it, and I just kind of giggled because I've never really been strong in scripting, and then I'm here, running scripts I never thought I'd be able to write, just thanks to that Enable engine. Are you going to make something like that for Augmentt, like someday, if it's not already there?
Yeah. So for us, I think really where we see a lot of that visual element is going to be around the automation component. So, as an example, what we find that people are looking at doing is, as an example would be the onboarding task or an offboarding task. So I want to onboard a user across multiple application. And that means that for this application, it's these 5 activities. For this application, it's 3. And so what you're going to see coming from us is a very intuitive automation solution and task execution, a lot more than script or sort of API drag and drop. So we're trying to really remove that, that level of complexity, even though it was easier when you have the drag and drop, sort of scripting. But we want to try to automate that. And we want to, instead of dragging elements, of the integration together, it would be a lot more about, I want to add this user, I want to these application, these licenses, and go ahead and provision that user for us. So it's almost like, because there's a lot less, in the background administration of the apps that happens in SaaS, and a lot more is about the user management. What you're going to see is a visual automation of user provisioning, deprovisioning, and administration, a lot more than the actual, how does the API become executed, so to speak.
So I'm going to ask you something that's going to be hard probably for you to answer.
Here we go.
But it's an important thing that, potential partners of yours, MSP partners, will need to know. So I'm going to say, do you have any upcoming partnerships that we should start getting excited about? And the fact that you said, we're going to start doing some backup stuff here in the next 30 days, like that alone is enough to make me happy. Like, okay, they're going to do some backup stuff. You don't have to name names, because I understand, like, this is a tricky, you want to develop that partnership with other vendors. You got to keep things under wraps until you're ready to launch, because you never know, like, when we're talking development, you never know if what you're trying to do can even be done until both of you have the rights. They need the right lock and you need the right key, right? So if they don't have a great API or no API at all, you need to figure out a way that you can control it, or they need to develop all of that, or whatever, right? So what types of vendors are you hoping to launch integrations with, maybe for the rest of 2021?
Well, it's a great question, and I'll say we're breaking those down into 2 sort of camps. One is the RMM and PSA camp, which, again, it doesn't take, a lot of digging to find out, but all of the RMM vendors and the PSA vendors, they all have, a core technology. They're all looking for ways to enhance and fulfill on their roadmap. And SaaS management, I don't think is a big surprise, is really something that every vendor is thinking about and figuring out, build, buy, partner, right? I will say that PSA and RMM integration is going to be and is on our roadmap for 2021. PSA if you're doing SaaS management in Augmentt, that information needs to be captured in the PSA, because fundamentally PSAs is how MSPs make money. It's certainly how they track the resources and the activity. And I don't see that ever going away. So you're going to see a lot of work coming from us on that point. The RMM side's a little more interesting because, again, what most RMM vendors are thinking about today is, all right, I have an RMM solution now. Most RMM vendors have acquired lots of technology and products along the way. And now they're looking at, what's the RMM platform going to need to do in the future? So most of them are looking at much more decentralized end user organization, taking care of infrastructure and perimeter security, while still important, becomes a little less significant as the year goes on if people are not necessarily going to come back to the workplace. So I would say you're going to see a lot of integration opportunities happening there and lots of work. So we'll be attending the events, we're joining their developer programs, all of that stuff. But the one that you mentioned is really the big one for us, is around backup. We've been spending a lot of time looking at backup solutions, whether it's the Backupify, the Spanning, and so on, and Veeam. And really what we did is we know that whatever we're going to partner with, we're also going to want to integrate with others. So it's not a us or nothing. We understand that choice is where the MSPs want to go, and what MSPs hate more than anything is being locked into anything. So we're going to avoid that. But when it comes to backup, we had a very, very specific set of requirements. One of them is, we know that a lot of our partners here at Augmentt are international. And so where is my data warehoused? Where is my data stored? I need to be able to control that. I don't want my data stored in Canada or the US or in Australia. So I want to choose where my data is backed up. That's number one. Number two is, most people want backup beyond M365 and Google Workspace. So they want to look at Box, Dropbox. They want to look at Salesforce. A lot of people want the backup solution to back up to their own storage, whether it's in Azure or in AWS. They want to pick their own S3 bucket, for example. So they don't want to use, the vendors. So finding a solution that is multi-location, that has all of the great characteristics of a backup, but that allows you to do granular restore, unlimited storage. MSPs don't want to be nickel and dime on storage every step of the way. So they want that one flat fee, and they want a product representation that is more than M365. Once you start looking at stuff like that, you end up at a very thin edge of the wedge with potential partners. So the partner that we've chose, I'm very excited for. But what I will say is, whatever the partner wants to pick, we will support. But we do want to give the option. So that'll be the big one that's coming out. And I would say if I had to guess, I'd say we're going to announce end of May, and we're going to make it publicly available in June. So I'd love to, the minute we're ready to talk about it, I'd love to drop you a note.
Well, I, for one, am going to, as soon as this is done, I'm going to go to the SolarWinds website and look at the 108 different products that they have, and I'm going to figure out which one of those you're partnering with, right? So that's
my
just
God.
Love it. It's just a gut feeling. I don't know. So I'm gonna say that this is a great stopping point for the first episode, and we're going to kind of make our way into the second episode, because I don't think people want to listen to 2 hours straight, right? So we'll break this up into something a little more digestible. And Robbie's like, wait, 2 hours? And
I talk about this all day, every day, so no problem.
yeah. So let's talk about philosophical type stuff. Yep. So, man, James Vickery said something last week that really kind of stuck with me. And I'm going to try and take that and apply it here. So we'll see how far I can get with this. As an MSP, if I'm going to invest into Augmentt or whatever, right? I need to know what my cost is going to be, what my return on investment is going to be. So we need to think about Augmentt as another part of the team, almost like a team member. So how much money is Augmentt going to make me?
I love it. That is the absolute only question that MSP should be asking when dealing with a vendor. That it's true. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. Tell me about what this is going to do for me. Well, I'll answer it this way. So when we build our products, it's really important for us to fit into one of two camps. I would say for every product in the MSP space, they need it to fit into two camps. It's either an efficiency play on the back end, the MSP is delivering a service and this is going to make them more efficient, or this is a new incremental service or revenue opportunity that they can now, basically jump into this new arena and start making net new money. When it comes to the MSP, certainly an efficiency play tends to be the one that is the easiest for most MSPs to understand, because they're spending dollars and cents today delivering potentially a very manual service, and this is going to help them. Anything that is incremental it definitely requires an MSP with an appetite to introduce a new product, to understand pricing, understand go-to-market, test it out on their customer, get good at selling, and ultimately, if all these things line up, then there's profit to be made. Augmentt fits. We have built while we built a platform, we've built a modular approach to it, and every product, every module address a very specific in one of those two camps. So for example, we have this thing called Augmentt Discover. Augmentt Discover does SaaS usage discovery, right? So it's like if you have an RMM and you do a network discovery, well, this thing does SaaS usage discovery. So it'll tell you who are the users in the organization that are using which app, which time of the day, how much volume, and it'll tell you the nature of the application. So what is this app? Is it duplicate to something else? Is it security? Is it potential high risk? Is it low productivity? So we'll classify all of the usage, and we will ultimately create you sort of a system of record of all your users, all of the applications they're using, so that ultimately you can compare it against what the organization has corporately approved, paying for, from a security perspective. Now, this is very, very helpful for those organizations that are security conscious, that want to extend their security offering beyond the perimeter. What that does, though, is that it does require the MSP to figure out how they're going to take that to market, right? They can either include it as part of an existing security audit. I will say I'm never a big fan of a sales pitch that says, why don't you pay me and then give the product away? That's a bad business model, because the MSP is the one where it's like, all right, so I'm paying and then I'm giving it away. Like, how does that work? So for us, when it comes to a product like that, a product that's on the front end, a lot of work has to be done around how do you package it? How do you sell it? Where is the money going to come from? And how much is the vendor going to help you take this thing to market? So that's sort of one type of product. The other one would be more of that, like Augmentt Engage, the Microsoft 365 management. That is really around cost optimization or an efficiency play, which we know today that most MSPs typically leverage their L2 or L3 resources to do Microsoft 365 services. And it is our belief that you should have an L0 or an L1 doing those types of services, specifically for those real basic administrative tasks: onboarding, offboarding, resetting password, allocating licenses, shared mailbox, all that stuff. So the goal for us is every time we go to market, we want to make sure that there is an upsell, cross-sell opportunity, a net new revenue opportunity, but there's also a cost savings piece. The real sort of genius comes into how do you price it, right? How do you make it so that the MSP can cost effectively acquire the technology, deploy it to customers, start to generate revenue, and see the cost savings? That part is where, guys like Robbie and myself spend a ton of time really thinking about what is the MSP, what are we truly saving them, what can they realistically take to market, and where can they make money? And I'll tell you, if we can't do that simply, and if we can't explain it to each other in a very, very simple way, it's not going to work. So it's got to be simple. It's got to be very, very clear. And I'll tell you, that's how we look at every new feature, every new piece of functionality. It's really around the MSP's got to make money or save money before we make money. And that's, if we look at it that way, it works. If you look at it like the MSP is my customer and I'm just here to sell him stuff, whatever he does with it is up to him. I don't think you're going to succeed in this space.
I love what you said there, breaking everything down into two camps, where you said it's either going to increase efficiency or basically give us almost a new line of business, a new source of income. And I think there are some reasons that some MSPs should not be doing one or both of those things. And right now, I think we should kind of educate them on that. So, creating efficiencies. If your MSP practice is really small, it's just one guy, and maybe you're only managing a couple Microsoft 365 accounts, less than 50 end users total, you probably shouldn't be signing up for something like this. Yeah, I get it. It's a cool new toy, and it's going to make what you're doing in the Microsoft 365 tenancy easier and faster. But really, how much time are you spending inside those dashboards, right?
Yep.
On the other side of things, let's talk about something new. Let's just talk about phones. Just a random example, right? So there's MSPs out there that they're doing an all right job with the managed services department, if you will, and they might be small. It might be just one guy, or it might be a few guys, and they do it all. They're the managed services, the break fix, they got the storefront, and people can drop off grandma's computer, and they do websites, and it's like, what don't they do, right? And then they learn about, I can sign up for Citricom or Intermedia or who, it doesn't matter who. And now I can go out and sell phones, and I'm going to make all this money because I'm going to go out and sell phones. But in reality, their practice is so small that it's probably really inefficient, which means they don't really have time to go out and sell. If they look at their calendar, no, not their calendar, because their calendar is never accurate. It's their timesheet. As long as they're keeping track of where their time is going, they should look at their timesheet for the last month. How much time did you work in the business, and how much time did you work developing new business and work on the business? And if you're working in the business and servicing customers a whole lot, and you're not really spending time to grow the business, you probably shouldn't be signing up for one of those new income revenue opportunities. Do you have a different point of view on anything I just said, Derik?
No, I listen, I 100% agree. I think as a business owner, and it doesn't matter whether it's you're a software business owner, an MSP, it doesn't matter. I think it's really important when you're looking at acquiring either new technology, you're looking at forging a new partnership, it's really important that you have a real honest conversation with yourself as to ultimately what are you trying to achieve. Now, we've engaged with MSPs where their priority this year is competitive differentiation at all costs. These people are in markets that are, highly competitive. They feel that because of the current situation, they really need, to stand out from the pack. And for them, SaaS management is a trend that they feel they can latch onto, and it creates that momentum for them. Others have big customers, and they are seeing a trend where, a lot of the technology has moved to cloud and SaaS, and they're seeing their customers interested in managing SaaS more actively. They're currently evaluating enterprise products, and the MSP is thinking, you know what, I need to figure out whether or not SaaS management is a strategic bet I want to make. Because the reality is, as an MSP, all roads are available to you. You can continue to go down the road with hardware, and you can make money on hardware for probably the end of time. Perimeter security is not going away. Networking is still going to be there. Telephony, print, you name it. So for us, it is really important when we engage with an MSP that we have a real honest conversation about, what are you trying to do? I mean, SaaS management is exciting, and there's a lot of ways for you as an MSP to get involved in SaaS management, maybe without even having to work with Augmentt. Put the statement out there, say that you're getting involved, start to associate yourself with it. And so for us, it's really about, are you trying to build this out? What aspect are you interested in? Growing the business, making it more efficient, servicing bigger customers, winning new business, differentiate yourself in the marketplace, being more competitive. And I will say that we are very, very honest with our MSPs to tell them what we will do with them really, really well, and what they're better served at. Listen, you're better to put a press release saying you're in SaaS management and then just be done. That'll get you the traction you need. And so for me, I've been at this long enough that I know that selling something to an MSP when he is not prepared, he may or may not be successful with it. That is even worse than had you not done it at all. So I would much, much, much rather have an army of super committed, super bought in, and super successful MSPs using our product than have every MSP on the planet that has bought it. And half of them are saying this was like a mistake. I don't know why I did this. This was a waste of time. That is more detrimental than the money that will come. And to be honest, at this point, and for the next few years, our goal is not to achieve this crazy profitability on a per MSP basis. Everything about Augmentt is, if you are interested in SaaS management, you see an opportunity to make yourselves more profitable or to generate new revenue stream, we want to work with you. This is not something where, like the old Enable days, where we would sell you a solution for $15,000 a year. Like it is, we are trying to make this a real grassroots movement and something that is very easy for MSPs to sign up to. And we'll worry about making money together down the road than we are about trying to make it now from a single MSP.
So I'm here.
Maybe I shouldn't say that out loud. Maybe I should be like, oh, it's all about making. I just want these guys to be successful in SaaS services. That's all I care about.
And that's important. I mean, you want the people that sign up for your product to be using it correctly. You want them to be successful. You want them to make money, because we'll talk about pricing later, but I suspect the bigger they grow, the more money you get to make too, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't do you any good to sell a bunch of little onesie twosies. You'd much rather sell, a 10,000 pack of licenses to one guy than 10,000 one license pack to 10,000 guys, right?
Well, to be honest, I've seen success on both sides. I've seen the big guys really latch on, and for them, it's a no-brainer. They know exactly what they want. And I've seen small guys come in saying, listen, I only have 2 customers. They're both 125 seats, but I only do 2, and I will. And again, the way we look at it is ultimately, what is going to make you as an MSP successful? Is it buying 100 licenses, putting out a press release, and making sure that you maintain that competitive edge for a few years? Then I'm happy with that. That's great. Like, I will be happy with that customer forever. Some others are like, we're on massive growth. We're shifting our business. We're trying to go upstream. And so for me, it's really about what is that MSP going to see as success, and does that success translate into our success? And if success is shared amongst the two of us, what they want to do will also make, then I don't care the size. I don't care. Like, we will partner together. Whenever we've had issues is whenever there's been either a real discrepancy between what the MSP feels is going to be success and what ours is. If it was selling 10,000 licenses to a single MSP success, then a small guy, we know that is the absolute wrong person for us. But if for us, selling 100 licenses to an MSP that wants to grow, that wants to make use of them, if that is successful, then for me, I'm more than happy to take those guys on also.
I love that. Thank you.
Love it.
All right, so I'm joined by Derik, Belair, and Robbie Brisson.
Yay!
Pretty good.
Awesome.
I've never taken French, but I'm really good at pretending I'm French.
Perfect.
I won't make you roll your R's.
Every now and then, yeah. Every now and then, I like to eat a good croissant. So,
like it. I'm getting hungry.
I especially love the ones from Burger King. The croissant witch.
Ooh, very nice.
All right, so we've been talking about your company Augmentt, and we talked about history and philosophy and all kinds of cool stuff. Now I want to get into some more technical things. So with Augmentt, this is kind of scary because we're giving you the keys to the kingdom here in a lot of ways, right? We're giving you access to all of our clients' Microsoft 365 accounts and the Google accounts and all the other things that SolarWinds owns that you're probably going to partner with. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep making that joke, Derik. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, man.
I like it.
so with you doing all that, we really need to trust that what you're doing with our data is like the right thing to be doing with our data. So how do we sign into your product? Is this like a single sign-on thing linked to our 365 account? Is it you don't even offer 2FA? Like there's something in between? Like,
I'll let Robbie answer. He's the expert of this.
Yeah, so this is a local account that you create with Augmentt themselves. So we're not SSO'd into any kind of OAuth or other products yet. So for the actual Augmentt account itself, we do offer 2FA, and you can turn that on by company. So you're fully protected there. And of course, when we're talking about things like access to M365, Google, etc., then we are using OAuth here. And so that is, of course, a form of single sign-on there. And that is to give our product, our app, access to those resources in order to perform the functions.
Excellent. And do you actually have data? Like when I think about what you're doing, I feel like it's more like an RMM tool than something else, whatever the something else is, right? So you're not doing the backups, you're just looking at the backups and reading the logs to see if they worked or not, right?
Yeah. So yeah, the idea, very much like the RMM, is that we try to collect the least amount of customer identifiable information. I would say try to collect no customer identifiable information. We have the employee's name so that we can basically map SaaS usage. But anything that is personally identifiable information, anything that is banking, anything like that, none of that is collected by our system. Nothing is basically stored. We from the beginning, so even though we're still a fairly young company, we knew that security was and is a cornerstone of building a product. And so we really early started implementing the SOC 2 framework. And that the reason we did that was for a lot of reasons. Obviously, you want to be a company that can be trusted, that does have a certain level of security that it has been audited against. But as a startup, what it does is it forces you from day one to start making some very security-focused decisions on the tools, the processes, who's going to have access. So even from the beginning, how we basically, how we do identity management, our application is built on AWS, and we use as much of those components when and where they make sense. One of them is identity management. They have a solution called Cognito, which does give us a lot of flexibility, but also a lot of security into how we log people in. The multi-tenancy and the delineation of data is also another big one. How we do backups of data is critical. Pen testing, vulnerability testing, all the way through to how do we handle taking in, financial information. So making sure that we as an organization, not a single employee can ever see an MSP's credit card if they decide to pay by credit card. That's a big one. It's very easy to say, oh, well, we'll do some workarounds. And if somebody wants to give us their credit card, we'll do a form. It's a lot more difficult to say we are going to go with a payment gateway and a subscription management tool that is PCI compliant, that is SOC 2 compliant, because from the beginning, we need to build it with that concept in mind. So I would say that those are all lessons learned from having done this over many, many years and knowing that it is much, much harder to try to retrofit that by going backwards than it is to just build it at the beginning. It's more expensive and more time consuming. And probably if I was to do a survey across the employees, a lot of them would roll their eyes at how much restrictive some of the security aspects of our solution is, but those are all things that will pay off. And I think that was a super long-winded answer to your very simple question, but I will say that we make sure that the data that we collect, how we collect it, how we store it, how we back it up, is all built on a very, very high level of security with that zero trust mentality, right? If you don't need access to something, you're not getting it internally. If you don't need to see people's information, you're not seeing it. It's least privilege access.
You say it's long-winded, but I was even going to add to that it's one of those differentiators we were talking about earlier. So you mentioned a few of our competitors, and some of those are also startups. And a security focus is typically extremely rare on a startup, right? Due to where you want your cash flow investments and things like that. And when you start to gain a user base, then you start making those shifts into a security focus. But that initial kind of lifespan of the first few years while you're growing your user base is often a best attempt at security. And whereas, this is where it gives us credibility is, no, we're security focused day one. And this, even from a product management perspective, has a huge impact on how I do things, like on my day-to-day design of product and the problems to solve and that kind of thing. So there's one of your competitive advantages and differentiators in trusting a small company.
Now, you mentioned that, you're doing things yourself to maintain the integrity of the data that you have, and the data that you have, I just mean more or less I'm just going to keep calling it the RMM data, because that's what I'll forever think of a SaaS management thing as. It's just our SaaS I don't know, whatever. So SMM, I like that. SaaS monitoring and management. I just made that up.
I'm going to write that down. I may claim that as my own.
You can have it.
You heard it here first.
Exactly.
All right. So you said you guys do backups of like your platform. When's the last time you guys have tested recovering one of those backups and like, I don't know, booting it up or logging into it and verifying the integrity of that backup, that everything's working?
Yeah, so we use a service to do that. So all of the critical information. So we use a combination of technologies. I believe all of it in AWS. Most of the information ends up in S3 for the short-term storage. It goes to Glacier for longer term. Both the S3 and the Glacier are backed up. The backups are tested. They're multi-region, multi-account failovers. And then they give us an SLA for the data backup. So what they do is they will back up the information and they will do testing. Now, I believe the backup is every week, and I believe the testing is every 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I'm not quite sure, but then they'll do an account restore. They'll test the integrity of the data, and then they'll basically shut it down. So it's a great service. We had to do it as part of SOC 2. It's in the same vein as the service we use. Well, obviously the backup, the recovery, and the testing is one. The penetration testing is twice a year. Vulnerability testing is once a month. And all of that is documented along with all of the policies that we have in our in-house system. And all of that is audited through third-party auditors twice a year. We use, there's lots of tools, Cobalt for pen testing and all of these things, but the auditors, are really good because they, for them, specifically when you're looking at SOC 2 type 1 and type 2, they are very, very clear as to what you need to prove. And if it's, you need to prove that there is weekly backups, monthly restore testing, that there's account and region failovers, you need to prove that. So all of that is basically, collected in our main sort of policy solution, a product called the Aramba, where we track everything, where we have the policies and the controls in place. You get that one easy dashboard that says, all right, here is the 182 policies that we have. Here's where pen testing, here's the results of the pen test. Here's what we fixed. Here's where the retesting happened. And I would say that is available. Most of that data is available to any customers that want to see it. So if, whether it's the attestation letter that we have done the audit or, the backups and so on. So I would say it's 100% transparency because you have to be, and really all about, making sure that customers feel confident that whatever they do with us, that data is secure and protected. And even more importantly, should they want that data to be removed, that we have the mechanisms in place to prove that data is now gone.
I love that you can rattle all of that compliance stuff off like that. You you might be the first person in a while.
Oh my God. We live and breathe this stuff every day. Like Robbie will attest, like I would think everybody in our company, like we're so focused on security, data protection. Like it's common knowledge across the board. It's
our own SOC 2 tier project.
Yeah.
The whole project just for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't help you at a dinner party. You typically get a lot of glazed eyes, but it's hard to pick up women with this knowledge. But the rest of it is it's good for customers and prospects.
Now, have you considered, having the auditor do the SOC 2 and then write a SOC 3 summarizing the SOC 2? Because I think SOC 3 also focuses on like the trust services criteria, and the SOC 3 thing can be, a valuable marketing tool, demonstrating the effectiveness of your control environment.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because, as we near the SOC 2 Type 2 audit, there's been a lot of conversation about where do we want to go. Certainly our international customers tend to want to push us towards ISO 27001. That tends to be a big one for them, a lot more than SOC 2. For us deploying the NIST framework in-house, which, obviously different, that's another big piece that we want to make sure. And then there's everything around GDPR, PCI, all of these things. So I would say it is a never-ending journey. But I will say that the SOC 3 and the ISO 27001 are probably the two things that we're going to try to push forward as a soon follow-up to SOC 2 Type 2. And then data related, again, GDPR, PCI, that kind of stuff, HIPAA to some extent, I would think is what we're going to be doing as a soon follow-up. So we need to have them all. I think it's really just what's the next one, right? The good thing is the core framework is very, like, out of 180, let's say, documented policy, you're probably reusing 100 across all of them. And it's really just fine-tuning the other aspects of it.
Now, you mentioned HIPAA and, the other things.
Yeah.
CMMC is going to come out here soon and be official, right? So right now, are you signing BAA agreements?
It's funny that you say that because we're just in the process with one for a prospect. Absolutely. So, we have a great CISO on staff. That's just a phenomenal resource for us. He's the guy that is tackling most of that. The BAAs certainly, although we haven't had a whole lot, we've certainly had a few, and we're prepared and are signing those. So it's definitely something that we're prepared to do.
I feel so dumb the way that came out because I know it's like a BAA. Will you sign a BAA?
Yes.
I just asked if you'll sign. It's like a NIC card. Like, that drives me up a wall. Why would I see a BAA agreement?
That'll be with us forever now.
Shoot me now. All right. So,
yeah.
How do we have proof that you're compliant with SOC 2 or eventually ISO 27001, et cetera?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's as simple as asking us or any vendor for their official audited letters. Some of them, it's as easy as a letter and a report. We've had customers ask us for results of pen test. We've had results, they want to know exactly who's conducting the penetration test. When was the last time you did your vulnerability testing? All the way down to, we want to see an assessment of your SSL certificates. And so a lot of that we publish on our site. But they want to see what are our web properties, what are the SSL, how is the implementation. Now again, it's a whole sort of security package of information. And what we do is any customer or prospect that says, listen, I need more than just the buzzwords. Like, I need to start seeing information. Typically we'll set them up with our CISO, and then we start sharing information. And it's really, what I would say is the fact that a company is SOC 2 versus not shouldn't be why you trust them or not. I think it really comes down to talking to the people that are in charge of security that are looking at it, and not even just the CISO, because he'll tell you what you want to hear in a lot of cases. It's talking to the CEO, talking to the salespeople, and seeing if security is woven into the fabric of the company. And that pretty quickly. If you ask a couple of basic questions about how do you handle credit card, can I give you my credit card over the phone for you to process it? You'll know really quickly whether or not the company is security focused or not. But for us, I would say it's as simple as asking us for the attestation, asking us information about security policies, asking us about, can I see the letters? Can I see what happened? And we're very honest with the stuff that we can and cannot share. And most of it, it's either because we're in the process of either doing, like I said, the vulnerability test or the pen test. It's where we stand, but we're 100% transparent when it comes to security. And to be honest, I think that's the only way that you should deal with a vendor is transparency. You may not like all the answers, but they need to be able to provide the answers, or at least tell you what they're doing. If they're not willing to do that, then it's always, I always find it's a little concerning to be doing business with them.
So you probably mentioned it earlier, and I don't know, overlooked it. I know that you said you have like people will sign into Augmentt itself. Do you support and or require 2FA?
Robbie?
We do support 2FA, yeah, and you can enable that on a per site basis. Yep.
Wonderful. What about for us logging into Augmentt? That's what I mean.
Yep, absolutely, exactly. So
Okay.
we break it. Our product has different sites because of the multi-tenancy and the tiered approach of the companies, right? So you can allow like a viewer-only entity to log into the product for a certain company within the product, and you can enable 2FA per each site or all.
Oh, that's really cool. So I'm going to ask you later for a demo, and I think it'll make a lot more sense when I can see it. For those of you listening on the podcast, be sure to go check out the YouTube, because we're going to look at this thing. Okay.
Love it.
The last thing I want to talk to you about. Earlier you said MSPs hate being locked into anything. Do you have contracts or have minimum spends or anything like that?
So typically, our pricing is around, for most of the modules, around the 49 cents per seat at the end customer. Now, you're not tied to where that license belongs. You can move it around. It's really up to you. It's 100% portable, and it's about 100 seats minimum. So $49 a month, basically. The contract is a 1-year commitment. And that's because we spend a ton of time early on in the process, really working on the programs, how you're going to go to market and so on. So to me, it really comes down to one of two things. If you do a 12-month commitment, the price per month's got to be low. Or if you're going to do a high upfront, then maybe you waive the 12-month commit. But I find it very difficult in this day and age to ask an MSP to part with a lot of hard-earned money on a monthly basis and then force them to commit to multi-years. One of the things that I've found to be super interesting, not necessarily maybe a great trend, but very interesting, are a lot of vendors moving towards 2 and 3 year engagements. I don't know how you sell that or how you convince people of that. Now, if they've been with you for 5 years and you're going to give them a great deal, then maybe. But as a company of our size, you really got to select what it is that you want. I am much more concerned about having committed partners for the long term, and we'll make a little bit of money until we grow together, than I am about making a lot of money once and that customer says, that was a terrible investment, I'm out of here. So it's a choice that we make, and I'd say that I'm pretty happy. It's worked out well so far, but that's really what it takes to engage with us.
After that initial year, month 13, am I in a new year long agreement, or am I month to month now?
Month to month.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I think that is completely fair. Requiring 12 months out of us because you're spending a lot of time with us to do implementation is completely fair. And then after that, we just go to month.
Yeah.
Easy. I think everyone watching this, they don't even need the demo or to know that this thing works. They should just sign up.
Thank you.
I'm going to write that in as a quote. Hold on.
Steve Taylor says, "Who cares if it works? Shut up and take my money."
I love it, Steve. I love it.
Did we just see you register there? Or?
Yeah, exactly. So
funny.
How do you bill? Is this billed per Microsoft tenant? Is it billed per technician? Do I have to pay you for every user account I'm managing? Like, this seems like it could get real confusing.
So everything that we do is built on a per end user seat. So the way that we look at it is however the MSP is charging their customer, that's basically how we want them to basically charge us. I've always struggled with pricing models that the MSP charges the customer, but then they pay a per site to the vendor, or they pay a per seat to the vendor, but then they're charging a per tech to the MSP. So for us, every module, we look at it uniquely. And so far, the feedback that we've gotten is per seat, but not those seats don't have to be tied to a site. So I want to buy 100 seats of something, but I want to spread it out across 10 customers, 5 customers, really doesn't matter. It is truly about, if you're going to charge as an MSP per seat, then we'll collect per seat. So we will become a portion of it. I feel like anybody that does it where it's different, it's that they're trying to hide a certain dollar amount. They're trying to get the MSP to pay it, and then it's up to them to go to market. So that transparency in the billing is important, because that's how the MSPs charge, and that's how we'll make money.
That's fantastic. And I assume you're direct to the channel only, right?
Correct.
Like you're not going to sell your channel only. You're not going to sell direct to like an enterprise, No. If Microsoft came to you and said, "You know what? We have so many people here. We should just use like a tool like yours to manage all of our stuff."
I mean, first of all, I'd pick myself off the floor if Microsoft called us and said that. And, but for me, again, the way we've built this, the way the value we bring to the market is at the MSP. And ultimately, again, the reason why we started this business is we want the MSP to drive more profitable services, and they should do that by selling to the customer. I'm not interested in selling to the customers directly. Again, I want the MSPs to make money, and that's the money they should make. So I've always struggled as a startup to have a dual approach where you sell to the channel, through the channel, directly to the customer. I feel like for us, it's all about focus. It's all about a very clean and very specific value proposition, and something that we can demonstrate real value. And I find that the minute you start to say, well, but we'll also sell here and we'll also sell to them, that value proposition goes away. And to be honest, I think the MSPs see right through it. They know exactly what you're up to. And again, to me, when I close my eyes and I think in 10 years, 15 years, what this business is going to look like, I want it to be like the RMM, like the PSA business. I want it to be a real movement within the MSP community, where the MSP community is better off for having had SaaS management as part of their portfolio than me saying, I sold to all of these different people that made money everywhere.
Now, when I look at your website, I love that you have pricing information right here on the site. We don't have to get stuck into a sales cycle. We can just see it right here.
Yeah.
But it does say starting at just 49 cents per seat monthly for Discover, and 99 for Optimize, which is beta, 49 cents for Engage. Obviously, these things are going to have that year commit. But when it says starting at just 49 cents, like, that typically means, when you buy 50,001 of these or more, that's 49 cents. But for the person that just wants like 100, that'll be $3.
It's so funny that you say that, because I was having this exact conversation with our marketing guy. It's exactly the opposite. It's as expensive as 49 cents, and it goes down to 25 cents. So the price that you're seeing now is the worst case scenario. So if you just bought like the 100 seats, which is the minimum, it's 49. If you bought 101 to 250, it goes down to 45 cents, and then it goes down to 30 or 40, then 35 cents, and 30, then 25. So we're redoing the page because I looked at it and I was like, that's starting. It's finishing at 49, starting at 25. I'm like, this is the worst. Like, we're going the opposite. So they're revamping that.
And I mean, honestly, I would just put the table there, or pricing between 25 cents and 49 cents, whatever, either of those would be perfect. But to see starting at you, I'm glad you and I are on the same page there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about real quickly. One last question about pricing.
Yeah.
One last question about pricing. So you said 49 minimum. Let's say I want to get a little bit of Discover, a little bit of Engage. Can I like mix and match and it's still just 49 minimum?
So I believe that, so it depends on the product. So right now, both Engage and Discover are both 49, so it really doesn't matter. Optimize in beta, and right now we're looking at the 99 cents. But I would say that the goal for us is to make it, as easy as possible for you to bundle this stuff together. We've also created this program called accelerator pricing, which is for MSPs. So we've had a lot of MSPs come to us and say, you know what, I really like Discover, 49 cents. I want to roll this out to all of my customers that are part of security. 49 cents doesn't work. So you need to come up with something, some sort of a volume, but I don't want to be like stuck in these tiers. So we actually created, as part of the accelerator program, a 2,500 seat bundle for $199. So the idea was like, listen, if you want to seed this truly, we get it. We're not here to nickel and dime you. We know that if you deploy this everywhere, you'll have a great foundation for SaaS services. So we'll give you 2,500 licenses. You can deploy it across as many sites as you want, and we'll just do a flat $199 fee. So forget the 49 cents. It'll just be an all-in-one. It's actually been super popular for those MSPs that either want to deploy this. They have a large volume of customers, but maybe they're smaller customers, and they just want to deploy this as a standard practice. And that's how we came up with this $199. But it's really up to you if you want to just buy, like, I just want to buy 100 seats at 49, or I want to go with this big bundle price. I think at the bundle price, it ends up being like, I don't know, like 4 cents a seat or something crazy like that. So
that's pretty awesome. Now, with that Augmentt accelerator pricing, I feel like you should have, add some NOS to this, man. Get us a bundle where it's got 2,500 of everything.
Ooh, I like it.
Like $499, get 2,500 of all three types.
Listen, I mean, I'm going to write that down. It's definitely, at the end of the day, I'll tell you, Steve, I'm much more concerned about trying to meet the MSP's need. And if somebody said to me, listen, I love it, I just want more, I want 25 across everything, we will definitely come up with something. Like, that is not an issue. We'll make money in year 7, 8, 9. That's when we're really, until now, we are all about trying to build a really loyal following of MSPs that are really successful with the product. And Accelerator today, it's a great point about adding Engage. If that's something that we start hearing, then you're definitely going to see that coming from us.
Now, I'm going to ask you the short versions, and then we'll wrap up this episode, and we'll go to the demo after that.
Cool.
So, products. Discover is an agent sometimes that we can deploy to each endpoint. There's also the agent list, where I assume there's like a master endpoint, a lot like the Enable back in the day, where you could install it on a server and then it would go looking at everything, right? So that agent's going to be used to watch all the applications that they've got running on the endpoint, and to see what websites they're going to, so that way you can figure out that they're using Salesforce, Dropbox, Office 365, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I'll let Robbie answer agent list. Robbie's the expert.
Yeah, exactly. So the agent list uses Cisco DNS logs, basically. So it's a bit more that, like you say, probe style, but we're not deploying any specific software. You're just dumping a log file. You can automate it through through Augmentt and an S3 bucket. And then agent is definitely the preferred method. The reason is we capture a little bit of user-based data so that we can relay the specific traffic to specific people, so that when you're reviewing the data, then you've got deeper insight into who is using which application.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love that you don't even require an agent. It is truly agentless. And you're doing it a smart way by looking at those DNS logs through our DNS filter. Speaking of DNS filter, many MSPs prefer to use DNS filter instead of Cisco Umbrella simply because of price. I mean, I don't think it's because they think one does a better job. I think it's just because of price. Hopefully you guys will just take that with a grain of salt and someday develop an integration for those logs as well.
Yeah, it's definitely on our radar. We see a lot of people talking to us about like Titan DNS and a few other solutions. So I would say a big part of our business development effort is having those conversations. It's funny because a lot of the DNS vendors, very few see the value in the log files as much as we do. Certainly, OpenDNS, now Cisco Umbrella, they've always had a real focus on capturing the log file and giving you the ability to use them post. But it's really rare across others. So we're definitely out there talking to every one of those DNS filtering guys or DNS providers, hardware, software based, saying, you know what, there is gold in those log files. Do not purge them. Give the customer the ability, or the MSP the ability, to store those into some sort of a storage solution like an S3. And then you can allow vendors like Augmentt to be able to take those log files and make sense of them, provide value. But you're right. While Cisco Umbrella is clearly, I think, the market share leader, specifically at the enterprise, when it comes to the MSP, there are lots of other solutions. So that's something we're constantly trying to get these guys to come on board. I will say the feedback we're getting from every one of those DNS filtering guys has been very positive. Like, they all see it. They just didn't have any real use for the logs files before.
Oh, that's great. Now then, so after Discover, then there's Engage, and this is the one where we're basically using Augmentt to now go in and make changes to the tenant. The first one was just looking to see, here's all the stuff you're using, guys. It's if I'm going to take the enable analogy, because you know me, I love my enable analogies today.
Love it.
The Discover is those 5,000 free licenses you used to give us. Like, here's a bunch of free licenses, so that way you forget about all the money you're giving me for the other ones.
What, you do that? I thought that was a secret.
Yeah, no, I'm not dumb. So like the Discover is like that free agent where it was able to go on there and do some really great auditing, and you really didn't want it to do much else than that. Whereas Engage is like the full-blown agent that you would install on the endpoint. Now, the difference is Engage doesn't actually have an agent, I don't think, because all you're doing with Engage is you're managing all of the SaaS apps. So it's all browser cloud based.
Correct.
Spot on.
Yep. You can have a job in sales, Steve.
Well, I kind of am in sales. I mean, I have guys like you on all week. And one of these days I'm going to start figuring out how to monetize this thing.
I'm there to help.
All right. Now optimize. Here's where I get a little confused. I'm going to be honest, because I believe what this is doing is this is looking at like all the licensing and making sure that we're not like paying for too many and that everyone's actually utilizing it, or even if maybe we're spending money on like a business premium license and these 3 people don't use the Office apps ever, or an Exchange only or whatever, right? So I just don't understand how someone could need this. Like, as an MSP who's probably reselling these licenses, wouldn't you be keeping decent track of what you're paying for and what you're selling to your clients, so that way you're not like just throwing money away?
Yeah. So if you take a look at the three products, Discover allows you to identify everything that's being used. Optimize is there to tell you, okay, of the stuff that you're paying, what is the utilization? And then Engage is, let's manage the rest. The stuff that you are, truly interested in managing through that one central location. Discover is really about a lot of the security value proposition, really understanding what is the true scope of your usage. But then typically what will happen is that information will come back. And once you start mapping the Discover information to what the organization is paying for, whether or not it's been bought through the MSP, right? Because right now, while M365, maybe Google Workplace, and a few other applications are actually purchased by the MSP through either a CSP program or some sort of a distributor, the reality is what we found is about 80% of the applications in use at a customer site really have been purchased outside of the purview of the MSP, because I needed a couple of licenses Salesforce. I didn't need to talk to anybody, or I'm using this marketing tool, or I'm using Zoom. And so what happens is, while the MSP does have a very good handle on the products that he has sold the customer, it's everything else that tends to drive the CFO a little crazy, which is, I understand Microsoft, I understand Google, I understand Salesforce. Like, those are my big line items. I get it. But it's everything else. And when the a financial person at the end customer says, how are we spending $32,000 across these 42 other applications? Who's using this stuff? What the MSP has a unique opportunity to do is to say, well, listen, let me compare the discovered usage against all of these applications. And now let me tell you where there are potential underutilized or potential, over-provisioned licenses that you may or may not choose to either, decrease the volume, get rid of the licenses, offboard the employees, or even worse, are applications that are allocated to ex-contractors or ex-employees that are still being licensed. We come across that all the time, for example, with Zoom, and even small stuff like Calendly and things like that. They're not big line items, but when you have 6 contractors that are still on Zoom licenses and they're just no longer with the company, that's very low-lying fruit for an MSP to go in and say, listen, let me do a bit of a cleanup. We understand the usage. Let's put some security policies on the stuff you actually want to block, right? If you're a Teams shop, nobody should be using Slack. So why are there 6 developers that are complaining on Slack about the company and nobody knows about it? Or even worse, why are people on Dropbox sharing company files? Like, let's block that. And then for the rest of it, it gives the MSP the ability to go and say, listen, we're going to help you optimize your stack. We're going to help you try to save some money, because you've got so many duplicate technologies that do basically the same stuff. You've got so many project management tools. You've got 2 communication tools, 3 file storage. Let's start to collapse that. And so that you as a customer can see that efficiency and cost savings. So again, the Discover is the overall usage, Engage is the management of the app, Optimize is really around SaaS stack optimization with the end goal ultimately of cost savings, which is interesting because very few MSPs, in the history, in most of their history in the last 10 or 20 years, have had a good story to go to a customer and say, let me take a look to see if I can save you money. Because the reality is most of what the customer has bought, it was bought through the MSP. And the MSP is the one that is ultimately doing the billing for all of this stuff. SaaS is really one of the few pieces of technology that is often bought outside of the MSP's control. And it gives the ability for the MSP to go and say, listen, I kind of did some rough math. We need to secure these 5 apps. We need to block these. And I don't understand why there's so many licenses here. Like, let's get rid of some of those, bring your bills down, and let's migrate finally once and for all from Slack to Teams or Confluence to SharePoint. And you're going to see an instant savings there. We'll help you through that. And that's something where the MSPs, charges for, because that's a very valuable financial and productivity savings service. Oh, I think you're on mute.
It's got to happen at least once every episode.
I don't blog because I always forget.
Well, I mute just because, noises. You never know. I think I'm on board now with the Optimize. I'm sold. I'll take 2,500 of those too. Let's do it.
$6.99.
We can't take your credit card over Zoom, though. We can't do it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll type it into the comment section on YouTube. That way you can take care of it later. Okay.
I love it. Thank you.
All right. Well, for those of you listening on the podcast right now, we're going to start the demo of Augmentt. So if you like what you're hearing so far about this product, get over to youtube.com/RocketMSP. Look for the SaaS application management from May 12th and skip to about an hour and a half-ish, and you'll be able to see that demo. Let's go ahead and get started. Robbie, I know you've got your screen shared. Ready for me to toss that up here?
She's good to go.
All right.
Thank you.
So it looks like you're in like the dashboard or something.
Yep. So I've jumped into, obviously beyond the account creation portion, which is really just, create a username, password, and log in. And I'll show you the initial kind of get started steps. So you'd want to do a couple things. You'd want to, first of all, create some companies. So you as the MSP, as you create your account, automatically creates yourself in here as an MSP. So in our case, Augmentt. And then you can add some of your customers below. The MSP kind of lives as its own company because you may want to, test internally, use internally, etc. But then acts as an overarching account as well. So from that multi-tenant type of view. Once you've got your different companies, you'll want to add employees to these companies. So as an example here, I've loaded some employees here, and you can do that either manually or what I was showing you on the integration page is a very simple M365 integration. And this will kick off the OAuth we talked about. Obviously, you saw it just flash because I'm previously authorized and logged in, so I didn't have to go through those steps. And now what it does is actually loads this whole list of employees with everything that's in M365. And then you can do a simple cleanup here of ignore employees that I may not want to use in the product. So things like the help desk email, things like that, like they're not an employee. You don't need to manage that kind of stuff. The next step would be simply to deploy agents. Typically, this is the preferred method because, again, it ties, as you can see right here, the user data specifically, or the data from machines specifically to an employee. So then you can start correlating that data. And this is very simple. So I won't have devices in this one, for example, but the list of agents will start showing up. They auto map. So we use host names and then, when possible, emails to map that information to the name and email. So there's some fuzzy matching going on. If we mismatch, you can just choose from the drop-down selector and remap accordingly. And then the list basically breaks down as you go so that only the remaining ones needed to be mapped show up in the list. So again, being in the MSP field for years and years, efficiency, that extra click every time or scrolling through a list, like we understand all those problems, right? Seconds actually matter. So we design very much around that. So once you've got your environment set up and upon agent install, the first thing it'll do is send data back. It's typically minutes or less. And then I'll switch over to an environment with some of that data as an example here. But you go to our Discover portion, and now you can start seeing which SaaS applications have been used, how many people are using them, typically how many visits they're doing, and then what is the daily active amount of days within your date range. And then you can even drill down to specific applications. So this Slack here has 17 users, and I can see who these users are, how many visits per user, and then who are the people using the applications versus not. So again, this is good on multiple fronts, both from a discovery perspective, right? MSPs are extremely used to going into an environment and then doing that topology, networking, doing the scans, and they try to come back with that big report. And then they get asked later on to support SaaS applications, and they have no clue what's in the environment, what they're supposed to be managing. That was completely missed on the agreements, etc. But they're on the hook for everything always. So this is very good as part of that initially, whether you deploy agents via the RMM, whether you just take a log file, dump it in, and then at least you get a good view into what are the stacks these people are using. When I'm about to pitch them, will I be needing to convert them to stacks, right? Am I a Microsoft shop and these guys are Google Workspace? And do we want to convert them? Do we not? Will we need new expertise, et cetera, et cetera? So it's really good for that initial discovery. It's really good for that quarterly business review as well, to kind of give that, that discussion point around, here are the tools you're using, here are the people who are logging into tools that aren't in your stack. Here are tools we haven't aligned to our stack, so there's more sales opportunity for the MSP as well. And then here are people using the shadow IT, and we should clean that up. You've got comparable applications in-house that you're supposed to be using for this. This data is exportable, is filterable, so you can, if you're talking about or for or researching into specific departments, specific people, or specific types of applications, you can simply break these down. Now we have an approval process here, I'll call it. Again, in our configuration section, you go to the list of applications. We'll show you all the apps you've discovered, or you can choose to see our whole list of applications, which will display basically 22,000 applications, and you can pre-configure stuff in advance. Again, this is all built on the multi-tenant type of scenario, so you can go to an all companies view here, and you can start setting, whether applications typically should be approved, so especially if they're things that are in your stack, whether you feel these are a risky application, and these are basically like flags, right? So we out of the box try and classify these applications based on things like, what kind of data do they contain, et cetera. So an application like Salesforce will show up as a high risk, and you may want to de-risk it because you use it. But if you don't, is there sensitive information in these applications? Well, there is. So you know that it could be approved even if it's a high risk application. And then similar philosophy on the productivity. Now you'll notice here I've got little numbers, and this is again that MSP focus. It's always difficult, when we compare to the RMM tool versus the SMM, right? I've done my high level configuration, and then I want to configure my exceptions, and it's always that view of what exceptions have I configured, where are they, have they retained, has someone changed them? So this is telling you that you do have exceptions, and you can easily jump in and see which exceptions you have, what applications they're for, who are they for, right? And then reset them from a single pane if you want, without having to jump back and forth between them. So I guess I'd say those are the small touches that we like to put in. And you can also, so we may miss applications, right? Custom links, custom URLs, custom apps, things like that may be offered. And so you can actually look in the total web traffic that's been returned, and then simply choose some of these applications and bring them into their stack, and then they'll be recognized as a SaaS app. But typically we try and leave out things like, marketing websites, all that stuff. So you'll notice, right, like Microsoft.com, you'd say like, I know what Microsoft is. Yes, but we're not trying to be a web filtering tool. We're trying to look for the SaaS app portion of those. So if you hit things like Excel Online, PowerPoint, etc., then we'll recognize all of those. So I'll take a breather here. Steve, any questions before I jump over to the engage portion of things?
Yeah, excuse me. So not questions as much as I'm seeing other uses for this thing too. So you mentioned that the risk would be, I'm looking at the risk as how much sensitive data is in there.
Yep.
What was the other reason you would consider risk?
Well, so, and it depends on how it's classified based on a bit of our knowledge of the company, but sensitive data, and or have they seen breaches in the past, or are they a smaller company that's not recognized, et cetera, right? So it's sort of a loose best attempt at giving things a default ranking.
I wonder what would happen if you saw SolarWinds Orion on someone's system. I just got to throw it out there.
No comment.
Yeah, we won't go there, but you may change the risk if you choose to.
I'm sorry. I love you guys, but I had to. I got to get one shot in there. All right. So, another thing that I'm seeing is you showed a list of all the people using a specific application and how many days they used it.
Yep.
So here's another use. Hey, Mr. CEO of the client or HR or whoever, right? Here's a list of everything that I see. These few people are only using this software a few days a week or a few days a month or whatever. Should they be on a different type of license? Maybe they don't need the same license type. And that might lead to a completely different conversation where, oh, hey, I actually thought that they were working full time, but they're just screwing around at home or whatever, right? So we might be helping them find efficiencies in other ways.
Yeah.
I mean, you're spot on, and this is where Optimize is supposed to go deeper in these areas eventually. But of course, right out of the box, Discover gives you some of that information. And yeah, it makes it very simple to say, hey, I'm noticing a trend here. Bradley goes in once a month on the last day of the month. Guess what? You're paying, a $200 Salesforce license for the guy to go run a report a month? Someone can schedule that report.
There you go. And now Bradley doesn't even need to work there anymore. Now that someone's Poor Bradley.
Or maybe he was just, the guy taking the report to the person, and et cetera.
Yeah.
He can still go have the conversation. He just doesn't need to spend a license to log in.
I know. I've got jokes. All right. So
you got Bradley's
I believe poor Bradley. Engage, I believe, is next, right?
Yep. Let's jump right in. So you saw me do the integration with the OAuth earlier, which is what populates Engage out of the box. Again, the same principle stands. If there's users that you don't want to spend the licensing on from the Augmentt licensing perspective, then I should actually switch companies here. Then you can ignore them in our employee directory, and then they don't get counted towards licensing. They essentially don't show up in this list here. Otherwise, this would be the list from your M365, Azure environment. We show you the licensing that's applied to users, whether MFA is enabled and disabled, and we actually allow you to control this. And again, this goal is to empower, right, those level 1, level 0, and 1 help desk to take over and be provided these tasks with least privileged access, right? So you're either doing one of two things right now. You're saying, well, Microsoft 365 is an important entity. Not everyone should get access to this thing. So your L3 guys are doing things like password resets, user provisioning, deprovisioning. So you're paying a heck of a lot for very intelligent guys who could be, doing expensive project work that pays very well. Or you're giving, a lot of power to your junior technicians, or potentially a brand new technician on a help desk, which realistically, if you're following any kind of least privilege access principle, you shouldn't be doing. Even if they're really, really good junior guys on the level 1 help desk, they just should not get that access, right? If your financial sector, health sector, verticals at all, or any of those businesses, you're supposed to adhere to these best practices. And these guys have access to M365. They're switching tenants. We've heard horror stories of removing the wrong John, right? That stuff happens, or deleting the wrong mailbox, etc. So what we do is we empower all the basic, the most simple, common use cases that we would want to do. And this is based on the amount of tickets that are typically generated for an MSP, right? Still 30% of tickets is something like password resets and simple user management. So you can reset passwords. And this follows, something as very simple as the same process as Microsoft So you can choose to auto-generate password, you can choose to manually enter your password, and then either send it to yourself or send it to someone else at that company, be it their manager. And if you're not sure who the manager is, well, you could go and search for it as well.
And I gotta say, I both love and hate that it pops up on the right, just like Microsoft 365.
That's because you're expecting it to break. So we also do things like block sign-ins, sign out of all applications, right? So simple but important security aspects, right? So if there's a malicious intent and someone calls in about that, you can actually do something real quick. Your first line of defense, your level 1 help desk can do that for you. And then typical license management requests can actually happen. So you'll have your pool of license provisioned either, directly as a CSP or indirectly from a vendor, and you can add additional licensing. So if these were, project, Power BI, et cetera, they actually show up and you can choose multiple licenses, and then the multiple licenses will actually show up in the breakdown here. And then MFA is a bit special, of course, because our goal is to empower the additional security via MFA. So, Microsoft still says that something like 99% of breaches could be solved if everyone had MFA enabled, and something like, I think a 2019 stat is something like 3% of MFA is enabled, worldwide or something throughout their user base. So of course that may have increased a little bit by now, but that visibility into MFA between security defaults, conditional access policies, or the per user level MFA portal, it gets somewhat complex. And we've heard, from our early talks with some of our MSPs looking at are engaged, that they were actually very happy the fact that we're using conditional access policies to control this rather than just trying to turn on the security defaults. Security defaults, unfortunately, won't always work. It is too strong. Legacy software still exists. Service accounts are still required. Even PowerShell doesn't support MFA yet. So you have no choice but to require some exceptions. And this is where conditional access policies come in. And our product can actually take over, read your current list of conditional access policies, which is how we know the existing status. And then we take over by inserting our own policy to add or remove users in bulk in MFA. And so it makes it very simple for an L1 tech to come here, have an overall look, see who is or isn't compliant, and then easily manage it as well. If you wanted to just enforce it throughout, you just select all the users, enable MFA, and you're off to the races. Of course, a short-term goal here is to have, right now it's a per company thing, and we want to bring back that whole MSP high-level 10,000 foot view of things, which is, can I pull a report across my customers and manage across my customers? And that is definitely something that we've got on our roadmap.
So I have a question. You said that there's the conditional access policies. I'll be honest, I've never used one with Microsoft 365. I just, enable the MFA and everyone's happy. It's perfect. Nothing ever goes wrong. So with sarcasm. So with the conditional access policy, is that saying like Billy can use these applications without needing MFA?
So those are possibilities within conditional access policies themselves. We don't give that level of granularity, right? So we've enabled a conditional access policy when you integrate with us that says for all apps, and then on or off, whether you add the user to that policy or not.
So I just want to clarify, because I think this is huge. Could I, for example, send out an email that says, tomorrow I will be enabling MFA. It is really important that you log into this website so that way it asks you to set things up. Starting on Monday, May, whatever the date is, 15th, whatever, MFA will be required for you to log into your apps. So make sure that this gets done before then. Otherwise, you're going to have a really bad day on Monday.
So you're very, very close. The only portion is we've actually made it a little bit simpler too, which is we automatically include an email that you just like select when you're doing your bulk, enable MFA, check off the email portion, and I can put it up on screen here if you'd like to see, but that will redirect the users with a little basically MFA message, and it says if you have never registered, you don't know how to do this stuff, here's the typical Microsoft URL where they show you how to do this. And so it'll blast one of those to every user that you've decided to enable MFA for. So it's a yes to your question, but we've also taken care of the setup portion so that it reduces the amount of stress that something could add to a help desk.
I absolutely love that. And to clarify, how do we do the conditional policy thing if we needed to?
So you don't. On the back end during the integration, it takes care of that for you. So if you have a conditional access policy or some, right, there could be more than one in place right now, we read them and we see which of those are enabling MFA and for whom. And so we extrapolate all that and move them over to our new policy and then just take over managing MFA within our own policy. So it creates a nice little policy that says Augmentt, please do not modify. And then it removes the onus of MFA off of the other policies and allows them to retain the groups, users, whatever that are in those policies to do the other functions that are not MFA related that they were doing. And those can be retained and continue to manage by those L3 technicians.
And I just want to clarify, if I have tenants that don't have any conditional access policies currently, if I want to enable MFA right now today, and I just hit this button and I hit enable MFA, is it forcing all applications to enable MFA and require it?
Yeah, so if you're not doing MFA at this point, basically, we seed our policy. We leave it empty because no one's in it. We'll show you this nice screen over here that says that MFA is disabled for everyone based on the report we ran. You enable MFA, so multi-select enable, and then everyone goes through the process of being enforced for MFA.
So I think that's the part that I want to understand better. So earlier I asked about the conditional access policy. How do I use Augmentt, and maybe I can't, to create that conditional access policy that says don't require it, but enable it? Like I basically want to say, I want to enable MFA, and I want everyone to have to go set it up, but I'm not going to make them use it for a few days until everyone's set it up.
No, we enforce out of the box. Unfortunately, the API set doesn't give us enough control to be able to give that leeway, basically. So it's a turn it on and it's enforced as of that time, and then it means that their next login is a setup if they haven't done so.
And I got to say, that's probably the reason most MSPs avoid setting up MFA. It's not because they don't think it's a good idea. It's because you can call it laziness or whatever, but the simple fact is that this MSP who hasn't enabled it, it's probably because they're not really too excited about getting 5,000 phone calls because people can't get into Outlook.
Yeah, and this is why you could do things like do it in use our department filter as an example, right? And then do it with groups of people. So train a small group of people, enable it, wait for the support calls, get through it, right? See the process. So because you can filter down, you can wait till you're at a 90-95% completion rate, and then choose the next group. And run through the process. So again, you can do it for everyone. You could do it for groups of people, and that'll help facilitate things there. About that, the stress that this is going to add to the support desk. But another thing is you've now offloaded a job like this from your L3 guys to typical help desk work.
Okay. What else can we do with the Engage platform?
So as of now, these are, your top 7 actions and adding a brand new user. So you can, brand new license someone like on board. Within the next oncoming weeks, we'll be releasing the offboarding flow as well, which is not currently present, which is selecting someone. And what this is a set of best practices. And I talked earlier in the show about both we needing the Graph API and some PowerShell integration. So things like managing shared mailboxes, transferring OneDrive access of files was not available in the Graph API. That was available only through PowerShell. So that integration I show you will include a PowerShell step. You'll be able to choose to add it or not. And then you'll have your remove user flow, which is, again, a best practices flow of blocking the user sign-in, resetting their password, signing them out of all the apps. And then that actually fires off the command, gets that done. Then you can go in the same flow through the steps of making the mailbox shared, adding members, transferring over the OneDrive access. Obviously, we'll put in a nice email that says, here's access to the files, because Microsoft doesn't automatically do those things. And then removing the user and the licenses.
That's really great. Now, I've got to ask the tough questions. So, there are other things that Microsoft 365 can do. Like the most important things, like the meeting scheduler or the mileage tracker, right? So those tools I think are worthless. So they've got like 70 things you can do with Microsoft 365, and 7 of them are useful. So if we look at this seriously now, there's Intune. So, there's the management of those computers. And I know that kind of blurs a line, right? Because now, is this an SMM or an RMM, right? But at the end of the day, this is still managing the SaaS platform. So are we going to be able to manage our Intune policies? Are you going to make it easier for us to do that and maybe give us some starting policies or any of that kind of stuff?
Look, I've definitely got some views on that. I know Derik does as well. A couple of fast follow things will definitely be around more user management stuff, right? So aliases, assigning groups, things like that are obvious needs. And then I think we want to differentiate ourselves, at least initially, on being more of the user management side of things for SaaS, rather than specifically, again, you mentioned some competing products earlier, and they just go really, really, really deep in reproducing most aspects of the M365 portal and the Azure portal, the Exchange portals. And Derik, I'll let you jump in here, but I think we want to focus more on the user side of things ourselves.
Yeah, I would say it's a difficult, it's a difficult road to stay on, because again, one of the good thing is people see value and then they want us to put even more in there. And for us, it's always the question we ask ourselves is are we automating things that the L0, L1 should do, or is this making the L3's job, somewhat easier? It's difficult for us not to want to replicate the portal, the Microsoft management portal, because you're like, well, we're just here. If we just added this and this and this, and this would make it easier. But it's definitely a fine line that we walk. What I would say is the barometer for us is we always ask ourselves, and we ask our partners, is this a task that you would like to offload to an L0, L1? If the answer is yes, then it should be on our roadmap. If the answer comes down to no, even if it was in your product, I would think that would be an L2, L3 resource. Then, again, the portal is there. It's great. It's there for a reason. But the only thing I know for sure is we're just going to keep adding stuff to it. So if you or anybody listening to this has an idea, an opinion, a vote, I would love to listen to it. Our roadmap is built in a lot of cases by feedback and by popular demand. So if it comes over and over again, people are like, listen, Intune policies would be great. I'd love to apply. give me some standard policies, let me apply them out of the box, and let me, prove that they have been applied, then we're going to put it on the roadmap. If we don't hear it, then it probably won't make it. Yeah.
Well, I think that something along those lines is going to be critical, because, and I understand you want to make it like L1 friendly, but I think that we should be able to say, this is an L1 person, this is an L3 person, and give them different privilege, different access within Augmentt, so that way they can do the things we want and need, and maybe even give us a custom one, so that way we can define our own access. Maybe we don't want L1 people resetting passwords, but we're okay with them making Intune policies. I don't know. Some people are weird. So I think what it comes down to is we want to be able to do as much as we can through a single platform. And if we have to sign up for Augmentt and it still isn't doing all of the things that we kind of expected it to do in 365, then now I'm still forced to look at something like Simian Cloud, because this can now manage my Intune policies, but maybe Simian Cloud can't manage my licensing, and now I still don't have that single pane of glass.
Understood.
So it's tough, and I get it. And also, I know we're past 3, so we should probably wrap up, but I really would love to see a little bit of Optimize. Derik, I know you probably have a lot of stuff going on. Robbie, do you have a few more minutes?
Actually, Optimize is available on a case-by-case provisioning, because it's in beta, so I don't even know if you've got it in there. So it's not in the live.
Well, then we don't have to worry about that.
Nice and short.
Cool. Awesome. Well, guys, I like what I'm seeing. I think that this is going to make it really easy for us to do some of the simple tasks in Microsoft 365. I'll say that, or G Suite, whatever. I'll say that once you start adding more integrations, more products and services that you can integrate with, that will give you a big improvement boost. And once we can start doing more in Microsoft 365 and start managing the other things that those users are using, like the OneDrives and Intunes and that type of stuff, because we need it. We need to be able to manage all of Microsoft 365, even if it's something as simple as saying, I need this user to get access to these shared folders in OneDrive and whatever, right? There's got to be a way that we can simplify and bridge a little bit of the gap without you having to recreate the whole portal.
Totally agree.
Because if you're recreating the whole portal, what's the point? But if you can give us some checkboxes to make some of the, like, maybe the most common changes, or make something take 1 or 2 clicks instead of 37, that's where I see this being helpful, regardless of if it's for tier 1, tier 3, the business champion, whatever, right? I think that this should be definitely more encompassing across the platform, and not just the end user management. But I love what I'm seeing. I love how clean it is. I love how you've made it, even though it's not symmetrical and that bothers me. I love how you've made it exactly where we expect things to be, because we're Microsoft guys, right? At the end of the day, we know if we click a password button, it's going to show up on the right of the, and it does it. So kudos, truly.
That's awesome. Great job, Robbie. It's awesome, Steve.
You could get people to just add comments to your YouTube video. I think that helps ratings, and they can help us define the roadmap.
Absolutely. Toss your comments on the YouTube video. I'm sure Robbie will come check it every day.
What I do? And Discord and Reddit.
Yeah. Toss your comments on the YouTube video here. Shoot me an email, say something in the Rocket MSP community. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, you can go to rocketmsp.io, and there is, for a limited time, you can get free access to the community. Anyone who signs up now, it is free to join the community, and it's like a forum. It's like Facebook, but without somebody else owning it, and we can do what we want. So yeah, thanks so much, guys. Hop on in, and you guys can join the community too. It's all are welcome.
We absolutely will, Steve. Thanks a lot for the
sure.
time. I really appreciate it. Great conversation.
Much appreciated as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thanks.